The first air fleet formed the primary carrier fleet of the Imperial Japanese Navy, a grouping of naval aircraft and aircraft carriers that at the time of the attack on Pearl Harbor was the world's largest aircraft carrier fleet. With the Kidō Butai as its primary carrier battle group, the IJN would reign supreme for the first 6 months of America's entry to World War II. Origins. In 1912, the British Royal Navy had established its own flying branch, the Royal Naval Air Service. The IJN was modelled on the Royal Navy, and the IJN Admiralty sought establishment of their own naval air service. The IJN had also observed technical developments in other countries and saw military potential of the airplane. In 1913, the IJN seaplane carrier Wakamiya was converted into a seaplane tender and aircraft were purchased. The 1st and 2nd Air Fleet were to be the primary attack force of the IJNAS organization. The Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service's carrier-based Air Corps, a naval air group, was a major component of the combined fleet, and whose size was dependent on the mission and type of aircraft carrier used. Several Kokutai formed a Koku Sentai, while a naval air fleet was made up of several Koku Sentai as carrier task force. On the 10th of April 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy formed the first air fleet, consisting of all 7 of Japan's aircraft fleet carriers and light carriers, with a total of 474 aircraft. This was a naval battle group at the time with the single most powerful concentration of naval aviation in the world. The large fleet carriers had 3 types of aircraft: fighters, level, torpedo bombers, and dive bombers. The smaller carriers tended to have only 2 types of aircraft: fighters and torpedo bombers. The carrier-based Kokutai numbered over 1,500 pilots with over 1,500 aircraft. At the beginning of the Pacific War, there would be 6 fleet carriers: Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shokakus, and Zuikakus, and 2 light carriers, Raijo and Zuiho. Kidō Butai. The Kidō Butai was the combined fleet's tactical designation for its carrier battle group. The title was used as a term of convenience. It was not a formal name for the organization. It consisted of Japan's 6 largest carriers carrying the first air fleet. This mobile task force was created for executing the attack on Pearl Harbor under Admiral Chuichi Nagumo in 1941. For the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Kidō Butai consisted of 6 aircraft carriers with 414 airplanes, 2 battleships, 3 cruisers, 9 destroyers, 8 tankers, 23 submarines, and 4 midget submarines. However, these escort ships were borrowed from other fleet and squadrons. It was considered the single most powerful naval fleet until 4 of the 6 aircraft carriers of the unit were destroyed in the disastrous Battle of Midway. On the 14th of July 1942, all carriers were moved to the 3rd Fleet. Transition Commanders. Commander-in-Chief, Chief of Staff. As land-based air fleet on 1 June 1943, the 1st Air Fleet was reborn as the land-based air fleet. On 30 September 1943, a cabinet meeting planned the absolute national defense zone strategy. The plan intended the Kuril Islands, Bonin Islands, Mariana Islands, Caroline Islands, Geelvink Bay, Sunda Islands and Burma to be unsinkable aircraft carriers. The 1st Air Fleet became the main force of this plan. However, it was soundly beaten in the Battle of Philippine Sea. The IJN then moved the air fleet to the Philippines to regroup. However, the IJN lost the air fleet, as it was not combat-ready in the aerial battle of Taiwan-Okinawa. After the battle it had only 30 aircraft. The only tactic left for them was the kamikaze attack. Transition Commanders. Commander-in-Chief, Chief of Staff. Some of the commanders of the Kidō Butai Operations Pearl Harbor. The Kidō Butai set sail from Hitokapu Bay, Japan under Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo on 26 November 1941, arriving in Hawaiian waters on Sunday, December 7, 1941 Hawaiian time. At around 8 a.m., the first wave began its attack on the U.S. Pacific Fleet based at Pearl Harbor and on outlying airfields. By the end of the day, 21 American ships were either sunk or crippled, 188 aircraft were destroyed, and over 3,500 American personnel were casualties of war. Japan was now formally at war with the United States. For the attack on Pearl Harbor, this fleet had a strength of 103 level bombers, 128 dive bombers, 40 torpedo bombers, 88 fighter planes, and plus 91 planes, with a total of 441 planes. Indian Ocean raid. Between the 31st of March and the 10th of April 1942, the Japanese conducted a naval sortie against Allied naval forces in the Indian Ocean. The Fast Carrier Task Force, consisting of 6 carriers commanded by Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, inflicted heavy losses on the British fleet, with the sinking of 1 carrier, 2 cruisers, 2 destroyers, and 23 merchant ships for the loss of 20 aircraft. Attacks on the island of Ceylon were also carried out. Battle of the Coral Sea. The 1st Air Fleet dispatched the 5th Carrier Division in the Coral Sea during the return from the Indian Ocean. On May 7, the U.S. sighted the Port Moresby invasion force and mistook it for the main carrier force. Admiral Fletcher sent an aircraft strike which sank the IJN light carrier Shoho. After this loss of air cover, the Port Moresby invasion force abandoned its mission and retreated north. On the same day, the IJN sighted and sank USN destroyer Simpson Oil and Iosho. The primary action took place on the 8th of May. Both carrier forces sighted and attacked each other. As a result, Lexington was sunk and Yorktown was damaged by a Japanese airstrike. USN aircraft managed to damage Shokaku's, meaning that she and her sister ship were unable to participate in the following operation. The remaining fleet returned to Japan to prepare for the Midway invasion. Battle of Midway. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto planned to lure and destroy USN carriers by attacking the Midway Islands in June 1942. The Japanese were unaware that the United States had broken the naval code. As a result of this, USN carriers were already in the area when the Japanese attacked Midway. On the 3rd of June, U.S. land-based bombers from Midway attacked the Japanese fleet but scored no hits. On the 4th of June, due to the poor reconnaissance efforts and tactical mistakes of Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, USN dive bombers were able to surprise the Japanese carrier force and destroyed 3 carriers. At the time of the attack, the Japanese carriers were in the process of preparing to launch an airstrike against the U.S. carriers, and the hangars were full of loaded aircraft, bombs and aviation fuel, which decisively contributed to the destruction. Carrier Hiryu managed to survive the attack, and Rear Admiral Taemon Yamaguchi launched a strike against Yorktown. Aircraft from Hiryu managed to cripple Yorktown, which was later sunk by a Japanese submarine I-168. In response, U.S. launched a strike against Hiryu and sunk her. That day the Japanese lost 4 aircraft carriers and much of their experienced aircrew. Battle of the Eastern Solomons. The battle took place in August 1942. It was one of the 2 battles around the Solomon Islands where the IJN carrier force engaged USN carrier force. As a response to Allied landings on Guadalcanal in early August, the Japanese planned a counterattack for late August. On the 24th of August, the IJN carrier force under the command of Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo arrived in the Solomons area. Raijo was then separated and was sent to attack Henderson Field. She was spotted by U.S. reconnaissance aircraft that morning. Admiral Fletcher sent a strike force in the afternoon which sunk her. About the same time the Japanese sighted the U.S. carrier force and launched an air strike which badly damaged Enterprise. Battle of Santa Cruz Islands. This was the second carrier battle of the Guadalcanal campaign. The Japanese army planned a major ground offensive on Guadalcanal for the end of October 1942. The Japanese Navy was to support this offensive. The IJN force consisted of 4 carriers. The USN had 2 carriers available at the time. The two forces first sighted each other in the morning of the 26th of October. In the following airstrikes, the USN managed to heavily damage Shokaku and Zuiho. In exchange, the IJN sank carrier Hornet and badly damaged Enterprise. Despite the tactical victory of the Japanese at the Battle of Santa Cruz Islands, their experienced aircrew was almost entirely wiped out in the 2 carrier battles around the Solomon Islands, and they were no longer able to conduct carrier operations for some time. Battle of the Philippine Sea. The invasion of Mariana Islands in June 1944 came as a surprise to the Japanese, who had expected the next U.S. target to be either the Palau Islands or the Caroline Islands. In response, the IJN moved to counterattack the U.S. forces. Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa had 5 large carriers and an additional 4 light carriers under his command. By this time, the IJN was able to train new aircrew for the carriers to replace those lost during the battles in 1942. But the training was superficial and they had no combat experience. The U.S. Fifth Fleet, under the command of Raymond A. Spruance, had 7 fleet carrier and 8 light carriers. On the 19th of June, Ozawa launched 4 successive airstrikes against the USN ships, but they were all destroyed by the combination of radar, new carrier-borne fighters, and pilots that were better trained and had much combat experience. That same day, USN submarines managed to sink the new Japanese aircraft carrier Taiho as well as Shokaku. The next day, a USN counterattack sank carrier Hyo and damaged 3 more carriers. Overall, the Japanese lost more than 400 aircraft with the newly trained aircrew. Battle of Leyte Gulf. After disastrous losses at the Battle of the Philippine Sea, the Japanese carrier force was again practically without aircrew and aircraft. This meant that at the Battle of Leyte Gulf, the IJN carrier force was only used as a decoy force, where it was ultimately destroyed. The battle that saw the last Kidō Butai survivor, Zuikaku's, along with Zuiho, Chiyoda and Shito's, succumbing to U.S. air attacks of Admiral William F. Halsey's Task Force 38.